Hello and welcome. This week on my channel I've been sharing a variety of different formulas, as I call them, ways to use some scenic designer series paper or pattern paper. You know, some of those papers that are just a little bit busy, that have a definite scene or some big picture on them. Sometimes these kind of papers can pose a little bit of a challenge when we're trying to do our crafting, and sometimes it's just hard to know what exactly we should do with them. You know, on our projects, our cards or scrapbook pages. I will link my playlist down below. I did 4 different videos with different ideas of ways to use some of these papers for card making, 4 different formulas as I've called them. And now this 5th video, I'm actually going to be doing a scrapbook page. So I'm taking this paper, and of course it's already cut down. I didn't think to do a little intro before I cut some of these pieces, but it's from the Beautiful Gallery Designer Series paper pack. It's a 6x6 pack that comes with the Beautiful Gallery suite from Stampin' Up. At the time of recording this in March of 2026, this is still available on the website. So I'm going to link it down below. It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful collection. There's 2, if you get the entire suite, there are 2 stamp sets, an embossing folder, some embellishments, and then a whole bunch of paper. And it's really beautiful paper, but again, it's some of those kind of definite scenes and things like that that I was kind of stumped on how to actually use them in some of my projects. So I decided to, do some brainstorming, came up with some formulas that I've been sharing. So for my scrapbook page today, the idea that I wanted to share was to take paper, look through some of these papers, and really think outside the box. This was a paper that it looks like trees, and I'm going to kind of try to piece this together just a little bit, a couple of trimmed pieces, but it was kind of like this. It looked like a bunch of leaves up here, maybe some tree trunks coming down like this. And I really like the combination of colors. This is Cloud Cover and Pecan Pie. This collection also has Secret Sea in it, so really pretty. But I decided, how could I use this maybe as a border on a scrapbook page in a little bit different way? So what I decided to do was take this paper and trim it and actually turn it sideways. And so I would encourage you to do that with any of your papers. Turn it different ways and just kind of see. Now, if I turn it upside down, would it just look more like a pattern versus tree leaves? If I turn it sideways and trim it down, is that something that I could use in a different way? So that's what I did for my scrapbook page today. So we're going to run through that. I'm going to put a page together for you. When I scrapbook, I don't always do like a 2-page spread. Sometimes I just have single pages, but this one I did go ahead and already create a companion page. So I'll show that at the end. We'll create this first page together, and then I'll pull in the second one so that when they are in the scrapbook, they're going to be together, left and right. Okay. And I am going to be using, I started out with a scrapbook sketch by PageMaps. I really like PageMaps. This was from Pinterest. You can find them also on Instagram and Facebook, I believe. They're no longer putting out new materials, but all of their previous stuff is still there to use. Just if you do, make sure you give them a shout out. Let everybody know that's where you got your idea from. They're very generous to still be sharing all of these online, and they have just some really awesome scrapbook sketches. I love their stuff. So just a tip, if you've never done this before, I saved this, or I think I did a screenshot on my phone, and then from my phone I printed this to my printer. And when it prints, for me anyway, it prints on a nice, just 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Now, you don't have to take a sketch literally and do it inch by inch exactly the same, but I decided for the video today I would just kind of show you one way you can take a sketch and kind of break it down and make it a little bit easier if you are trying to kind of duplicate what they have on the sketch for you. So I know that I'm doing a 12 by 12 size page. So if I take this paper, whatever size this is, it doesn't matter that it printed out smaller than 12 by 12. If I divide it in half lengthways and in half crossways, that should represent 6 inches. 6 inches, 6 inches, and so on. And then if I divide those sections in half, that should be 3 inches. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. So now each of these squares should represent 3 by 3. And then I can kind of take that and look and see, okay, well, if this big sheet of paper covers about 3 squares, I'll know that that's approximately 9 inches. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a legend to a roadmap to be able to then kind of translate it onto your own page. So if you, if you're kind of getting started and you don't trust yourself, or you just really like to kind of have that definite measurements and stuff like that, if you take a sketch like this that doesn't have measurements, you can kind of figure that out a little bit on your own. And, honestly, don't get caught up on the minute details. But that'll at least get you started. So I went through and I wrote just a few things down that I thought, okay, I think this might be 6 by 8.5. This might be 2 by 3. These little half circles might be about 1.5 inches diameter. Once I got some of my pieces prepared, it's not exact, but that's okay. It kind of gave me that starting point. So anyway, I wanted to show you this, and then we'll see kind of how that translates into my scrapbook page today. Now, I am scrapping a couple pictures of our cat. This is Lola. She is a rescue cat that we adopted about 1.5 years ago. These pictures are actually from a year ago, about January, February of 2025. Now, she's a very timid cat. She's scared of our other cats. So, having a few pictures of her is kind of a little bit more special because she hides. She does hide a lot. So, anyway, if she knows that there's no other cat around, she'll come out. But anyway, it's a little bit more challenging to get up close to her sometimes. So these are going to be on this page, and I have more of her on the other page. If you're not a cat person, pretend that this is a dog, or pretend it's your kids or something else. But I am scrapbooking my cats today. So let me pull in those other pieces of paper that we're going to use then before we get to the photos. Okay, and before I show you the specifics here, I wanted to show you this new pack of paper that Stampin' Up! Has. I absolutely love this. I'm definitely ordering more. It's this really cool wood grain look, and it's different colors. So there's kind of this pecan pie on the one side of this sheet, kind of more of an early espresso on there, but it actually comes as a whole pack. You can see they use basic beige, crumb cake, some more early espresso, basic beige and early espresso, some more crumb cake, basic beige, and then pecan pie with the crumb cake on the back. So they kind of mixed and matched, but you get, I believe, 12 sheets. Let me just look at my pack here. Yes, you get 12 sheets of this wood grain paper, and this is just so cool for being able to just kind of use as a neutral in your project. So I would definitely take a look at that. It's called Wood Grain Wonders 12 by 12 designer series paper. I will link that down below. Like I said, I'm getting a couple more packs of it because I don't want to run out. It's been really cool to have. So what I did following my sketch, I figured that this main sheet over on this side was maybe about 6 by 8.5. So I cut that to that size. And then over here, kind of this flowery paper, I wanted that to be that designer series paper that I talked about at the beginning, that started out kind of looking like trees. I'm turning them sideways, so it basically just kind of looks like a pattern, maybe kind of a nature-esque type pattern. I am going to have to piece 2 sheets together because these are only 6 inches, and I believe I want to use, kind of looking at the sketch, it's maybe, it's really only about 1.5 inches or so that I'm short, but I'm still going to go ahead and piece it together because that's part of, part of doing this is using what we have and kind of figuring out how to make it work. So I am going to overlap about, this much. Let me see what that technically is. Yeah, it's about 1.5 inches. So I need to decide now Do I want it to be this part that's going to be added on and have more of those? Do I want more down here to be added on? And then I also need to kind of think about where are my photos going to be. Well, one of them is going to be right about here. Let's just see how this one fits. Depending on kind of where I might trim one of them down just a little. I could overhang that one just a little bit. So if this one is here, that would cover this seam pretty well, and it wouldn't add extra kind of bulk up here. And according to the sketch, there's kind of a tag up here, as well as some additional embellishments. That would also kind of help cover up that seam if we did a little seam up there. But I think I'm going to do it down here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that trimmed and get these kind of put on here. Okay, so I went ahead and just cut a 2-inch strip off my one piece of paper. I am going to overlap them just a little bit. And I did want to show you on the sketch, they used 2 photos that were 3.25 by 3.25. I'm modifying mine. I have I believe it's 4x4 and then a 4x6. And I didn't want to cut them down any more than that. So I'm just going to, use a longer strip of photos on there. But because of that, I'm also going to move this sheet closer to this edge. If you can see, this is probably about 1.5 inches, according to our squares, away from this edge. I'm going to just keep it pushed kind of a little further over that way. And then this decorative piece overlaps this quite a bit, and it's 2 inches away from the edge over here. And I'm gonna keep it over that way further, just to kind of spread out that base portion a little bit more. So just modifying the sketch a little bit to fit my needs. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these adhered down, and I'm just gonna use some tape runner. Okay, and I do want it centered top to bottom, and like I said, maybe about 3/4 inch or so away from this right edge. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to start by adhering this top piece down, and then, but not really push the bottom part of it down. I want to be able to tuck that other piece right up underneath it. So let's see. Could probably go right about there. Okay, I'm going to add some adhesive here. All right, there we go. Okay, and then I think the next part is let's start doing some of the other little decorations that's on this page. Now, along the top and bottom, they have these half circles. So I took this paper, flipped it over, and I cut some circles out of this side. I cut 4 circles, and then I just trimmed those each in half. So that's what gave me my half circles. Now you'll notice that they don't stretch end to end quite like the sketch does, and that's okay. I was okay with that anyway. If you want to try to get more specific, maybe switch your punch size, but I didn't quite have the right size punch to get it exact. So I'm just kind of centering my 4 circles right along the top there. Okay, so I adhered all 8 of those half circles. The next thing I'm going to do is adhere this little piece that looks like a tag. It has, on the sketch, it actually has kind of an elongated hole punched at the top. And if you don't have something like that, just use a circle or something like that. I actually have this little Stampin' Up! Really old punch. Man, my lighting is not great right now, but it has kind of that elongated punch, and I haven't used it in years, so I pulled it out of my drawer, and I'm going to use that just so it's the same, and I'll kind of get that centered side to side And let's see, about that far down. And I just used a Creative Memories corner rounder and rounded the corners. This is just a two-tone Pecan Pie piece of two-tone cardstock. So this is going to go kind of right up here, but actually attached to it with a string is going to be this whole row of these little circles. So I took another little hole punch, or a circle punch, a small one, and one of the designer series paper in this pack had kind of a almost like a canvasy looking texture. So I used that for my my circles, and I cut out however many there are along there. Now my idea is I was going to grab just a big needle and use some kind of foam behind it and punch the two little holes, because if you can see, it looks like a string is running through there. But I happen to have this little hole punch. It's a teeny tiny little hole punch. I'm going to use that and punch two little holes kind of toward the top of each one. Actually, I did one of them already as an example, and that hopefully will work to put my string through. I'm hoping to use some twine, so if I can get that through, we'll use that. And again, this is not something that you have to copy exact. If you want to just, if you want to leave that off, you can. You can put kind of a string along there and just glue your circles on top of it, clear across there. They don't have to be strung through, but I thought I would try doing that stringing and just see how that works. Okay, so I have my 9 little circles, and then I'm just going to grab my twine, and I'm going to try to use this twine. It is a thinner twine, so I'm going to see if I can get these strung through here. I think I will just cut off kind of a big section so it's not on the spool, and the end off so it's a little nicer. We'll just see how this goes. Come up from the back. I might have to trim the end a few times to keep it kind of cleaner, because it does kind of want to fray a little bit, but that seems like it might work. So I'm going to go ahead and get all 9 of these strung on here. And again, I may not use all 9 by the time I kind of get it positioned on here, but I think I'll try to at least string 9 on, and then we'll kind of see where we go from there. Okay, stringing those on was just a little bit more challenging than I thought it might be. I could have made it easier on myself and grabbed a big needle, like an embroidery needle or something like that, but I guess I just like a challenge. So I did end up having to trim my end of the twine several times because it was fraying and I needed it just a little bit smaller. I also grabbed kind of a pokey tool and helped poke it through on a few. So just a little tip, if you're planning on doing something like this, make sure you use a nice thin twine. Either use a needle or plan to have some kind of a tool to help you, and cut extra string than you think you would need, an extra long piece, because you might have to trim it a few times and end up with a little bit shorter piece at the end. So I did tie just like a single knot around the top of this. What I'm going to do is add an extra little bow to that, and on the sketch it has it kind of overlapping this a little bit more, but I'm going to position it right about here, I think. I'm going to bring in another little embellishment here before I stick this down. And then I only put 8 circles on here instead of the 9, because once I got this kind of just dry fitted across here, I thought 8 was plenty. And then this end over here, I just tied a little tiny bow. And actually, I could probably adhere that down and work my way back this way. That might be the way to do this. I want to get kind of a nice little, little sag in that swag. Now, let's see. Okay, yep, I think I'll do that. I'm going to use a little glue dot behind there. Grab that glue dot on the back of there. I'm going to put that right about there. And then I'm going to just run a little bit of tape runner, I think, on the back of these. Start out just with 3 here so I can get them positioned. Okay, there we go. I like that. Do a few more here. Now, I will say, I don't always go to this much work on my scrapbook pages. Some of them I keep very, very basic. You know, I take just a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, cut a big piece of it, put my photos on, you know, add a title, and I'm done. But once in a while, I think it's kind of fun to go a little bit more over the top, embellish a little bit more, follow a nice detailed sketch like this. And especially, you know, kind of the purpose of doing this is to show you how to use some of this different types of paper in different ways. And I don't think I have any adhesive on the back of that one. So once in a while, I like to go into a little more detail, spend a little more time on the page, but I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea that that all my scrapbooks have really super detailed pages, because they certainly don't. Okay, and then I think I'll just go ahead and put some adhesive on the back of there. That might have been really kind of a backwards way to do that, but it seemed to work. I got my spacing kind of how I wanted it. And there we go. All right. I like how that turned out. Now, for some of my little embellishments on the sketch, it has some flowers. So I did go ahead and do some die cutting. These are some really old Tim Holtz dies. It's one of those really thick metal dies. I've had it for years. I think the year on the back of it is maybe like 2004 or something like that. I don't have it right in front of me, but yeah, I've had it for a while, and it's pretty cool. It cuts some nice things, but I haven't used it a whole lot. So the other things I'm bringing in just to kind of mimic and mirror that second page that I already have created is a very vanilla circle and some of these leaves from the Nature's Symphony set. And I just realized I have 7 circles here and not 8. I just wanted to correct myself. I started with 9 like the sketch, and I just I ended up just using the 7. So okay, so let's get our photos in here. I think I'm probably also gonna matte my photos in just a little bit of very vanilla to just kind of make sure they stand out from the background. But I wanted to do a little bit of dry fitting, and it looks like this tag is slightly over, yeah, that photo there. So we can kind of bring these up just a tad. And then they have some journaling down here, but another little flower over here. So I just need to kind of decide. I hadn't totally decided on the embellishments yet. I was going to kind of do that as part of my process here. They do have some leaves coming up over here from the flowers. So maybe something kind of like that. And I could even do something like that. Maybe do some journaling or something like that. Now, the one thing I have not decided on is a title. Their title they put right on this little tag here. I was thinking I could just use her name, Lola, L-O-L-A, which would fit there. I could also, I like to sometimes put the titles down on the bottom. I could do that. So I need to do a little bit of thinking. The other embellishment that they have on this little swag, these little circles, they have some little hearts here and there. And I think that's appropriate for this page. So I am going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and matte these photos in some very vanilla and find my little heart punch so that we can add some hearts across there, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I did go ahead and map my photos on some very vanilla white cardstock, and I did go ahead and adhere them down. I decided kind of where I wanted them placement wise, and I didn't want to lose that spot. So I just went ahead and adhered them straight down to the page. I have this little teeny tiny heart punch that I've had forever, probably 25 years at least. I think I had this when I very first started scrapbooking. So I'm going to use that, and I really should back up and say before I started, I actually took a piece of Secret C two-tone cardstock and I gutted it. And if you've not heard of that before, I will, I'm going to make a little video and put it on my channel, and I'll link to that. But it's where you take and you cut out the center of a piece of cardstock that would just, or paper, that would have just been in the background anyway. If you need to keep that in there for stability, don't feel like you have to cut it out. But I wanted to cut that out because it was going to be behind this cloud cover two-tone cardstock anyway, and then I was able to use this portion of that Secret C paper on the adjoining page, which you'll see a little bit later. So because I gutted that, I cut it so that there was an inch border all the way around. Then I cut two sides of my cloud cover, not quite half an inch. It was just a little bit under half an inch. So then I was able to center that onto this Secret C paper, so that I have just, you know, about 1/4 of an inch border on all four sides. When I did that, then I had these as scraps that I cut off. So I have 2 of these, and I thought, well, that'll be perfect to cut these little hearts out. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not going to cut. So on the sketch, they have these little hearts just kind of positioned on a few of these circles, just kind of haphazard. And so I'm going to maybe start with 5 and see if that's enough. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's see where that gets us here. And like I said, they're kind of haphazard. I'm going to put 1 there. And this is two-tone, so I'm kind of looking for the darker side just because I think it'll show up a little bit better. But of course you could do either side. And they have some of them kind of hanging off, some of them just centered. Something kind of like that. So, okay, I'll get them glued down. I may not have it hanging off quite so much, but I think that's kind of cute just to have a few kind of scattered around. And I think I will just use a little bit of liquid glue. These are so small, I think that'll be easiest. I'm going to try to use this. Oh yeah, that'll work good. I have this little tool from scrapbook.com. It's kind of like the Take Your Pick tool from Stampin' Up, which I love for picking up embellishments. This is basically the same, kind of the same concept. Has a kind of a gummy end on one end and a, whoops, and a pokey end on the other. All right, there we go. Okay, what should we do next? Next, I think we will work on our little embellishment cluster up in the corner here. Now, I'm just doing the one on this page because I do have a couple on the adjoining page, so you'll see that. You know, there's kind of the rule of thirds. If you do a kind of a visual triangle, it's appealing. It draws your eyes in. Now, I don't always stick to that, but I do think it looks nice if you can kind of do a visual triangle. I don't know that it's going to be exactly that by the time I'm done, but that is the reason that I'm just doing one cluster of some embellishments here on this page. And I am starting with a circle. I use the Stylish Shapes dies to cut that circle. This is very vanilla. And I'm doing that just to kind of give my embellishments a place to land, like a landing place. Some of them are cut out of the same colors here as the rest of our paper, and if we don't have something to kind of help them stand out, they'll just really blend in. And sometimes embellishments can look like they're just kind of floating out in space. I don't always add a die cut like this, but I do think it's nice to do once in a while. So just a little tip, if you ever just kind of have some extra time on your hands and you want to cut a few different shapes, die cut shapes kind of like this in white and vanilla and stuff like that, and just keep them on hand. They're nice to be able to grab out and add, you know, just as kind of that grounding place for your embellishments. So on top of that, I am adding this Pecan Pie kind of leaf branch out of, like I said, it's out of the Nature's Symphony, kind of a newer set from Stampin' Up. I haven't worked with it yet, but I will be. You will see that on my channel here. I'm going to just use liquid glue and glue this down. And try to not get my fingers in all the glue, but hang on to it. And let's see here. I don't mind it overlapping this tag just a little bit. And even going up onto this border is okay. I don't want it off the page, but we'll do something kind of like that. I did cut these flowers from this Tim Holtz Alterations, Tim Holtz with Sizzix. The, let's see, where's the name of it again? Tattered Florals, it's called. And the date on this is 2010. So, you know, I've had it for quite a while. I got it early on in my crafting journey. Tattered Florals. It's one of those big, is it steel rule dies? Is that what they're called? They cut really nice, and I'm glad that I pulled it out and started playing with it because these flowers are pretty cool. These are just 2 of them that it cuts. It cuts 4 different ones, but you'll see the rest on the other page. And then I am taking my Pecan Pie and a little blending brush, a little foam brush, and I'm inking the edges of some of these. So just to add a little bit more interest and, you know, some of that distressed look, I guess. I like to do this. Sometimes I do go all the way around, you know, the edges of all my die cut or my pieces of designer series paper and stuff like that, but I don't always, you know, sometimes just a little bit is plenty. I already had done this one. So let's see, I'm not sure yet how I'll position those. I'm gonna go around this one just a little bit too. And this one, it's this kind of brown wood grain on one side and more of a basic beige on the other. Let's see, I don't know what side I'll use yet, so I'm going to ink the basic beige side. It really won't show up on the darker brown, the early espresso, so I'm not going to do that side, but I'll get this side ready just in case I use the lighter side. Okay, and then let's see here. We do need to decide how this is going to all lay out. So, do I want these stacked together? Kind of as one. Something like that. I don't mind that at all. These are coming along. This is pretty much ready to go. I think I have one more little detail I want to add besides the title. That's the last thing I haven't really decided on. Do I want to die cut some letters? Do I want to maybe use some sticker alphabet that I have? I need to think about that before I make that decision. And what do I want it to say? Do I want it just to be her name or something else? So I got to do a little bit of thinking on that. I think at this point I am going to bring in that companion page and show you that. All right, and first of all, I'm going to just apologize about the glare. It's my lighting. I'm hoping to get some better lighting here in my filming area, but this is what I'm working with for now. So there is glare on the photos, unfortunately, but this is my companion page that I created to go with this first page. And you can see, of course, the pictures are of Lola, but I used more of that same designer series paper, turned it sideways, and did a full border all the way from the top to the bottom. I used a little kind of a scallop die, border die, and cut some of that cloud cover to go all the way down. I used that wood grain paper for the entire background so that it would kind of, you know, flow and coordinate with this side over here. This is where I used that piece of Secret Sea that I gutted from the back portion of this one. And let's see, you can see I did a lot of the leaves and the different flowers from the same die cuts that I've been showing you over on that page. I did some inking around them. I added that twine, excuse me. And then I found some grid paper in my stash, and I used this border punch that looks like notebook paper, and just cut that so that it would, you know, kind of look like a piece of notebook paper. This is where I can do my journaling. I will do that later after I take my photos and everything, but that is the scrapbook layout using this designer series paper in a different way, turning it sideways, piecing it together, and using it, you know, just kind of as a decorative element, a decorative piece of paper on a scrapbook layout. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that maybe you got some information, some tips and tricks to go forward with using a sketch. And I do want to share also, I used a second sketch as a jumping off point. This is also PageMaps. I used this as a jumping off point for this side over here. So I wanted to give them a shout out. I did flip it so that I have my borders over on this side. And this is where I got the idea to use kind of that circle element. I do have a very vanilla circle underneath these flowers here. It's kind of hard to see, but I started with that and then mimicked it up in that corner there. This is where that little notebook looking page idea also came from. So huge shout out to PageMaps for their inspiration. Now to finish these out, I will add a title later after I share this on social media with my pictures and things. I will add my journaling. I'm probably not going to do that beforehand, but I'll add that title. I'll take pictures, add that to the end of the video here. I'll add them to my social media pages so that you can see them there. And I really hope that you were able to maybe pick up a few little tips and tricks, maybe using some designer series paper that's a little more difficult to use, using it in a different way, kind of thinking outside the box, maybe even using some sketches as kind of a jumping off point, or even just a guide for your entire page. I really love to use sketches. It's a good way to, you know, just kind of get going on your pages without having to overthink things. Whether you're a scrapbooker or a card maker, I hope that you were able to pick up a few different little ideas or tips or tricks. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.